Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SP Reviews where today we have ourselves an album from an act named Hicks titled The Outsider, and if we switch over to here we have ourselves the full release on Spotify. We've got The Outsider, it has 10 tracks in it and we're going to be listening through all of this album from start till finish and we're going to be hearing what we think. Should we notice that this is the follow-up album, the one after the previous release, Dirty Little Terror, so obviously if you like The Outsider, feel free to go check out Hicks's previous works, but we'll start with, before we begin, intro.
We gather here today for the funeral of Hicks. After a long battle with drug abuse and mental health issues, Hicks took his own life on April the 17th, 2021. We will now guide his soul to the above. Although Hicks was not perfect, I believe his soul can still be salvaged. Some may say he was a bit of an introvert, a loner, and maybe even an outsider, choosing to spend his free time alone. Of course, we cannot mention Hicks without mentioning his past and his numerous fuck-ups. Hicks was tired of having to be the bigger fucking person. Hicks was tired of saying what people wanted to fucking hear, and Hicks was tired of protecting the feelings of others when they didn't give a fuck about him. What are you looking at me like that for? You know I'm only telling the truth.
Amazing. Thoroughly cinematic and dramatic. I appreciate the fact we're given this speech before the funeral. It gives immediate context to what this album is about, with Hicks's funeral going over their journey potentially to that point, given the wider range of the stuff with the drugs and the introversion and everything like that, and maybe there being a glimpse at a bit of an edge there, especially when we have the lower harmony the harmony with the vocals, a bit of distortion and modulation there. For the what are you looking at me like that for kind of thing to kind of snap you out of it. I think as a final comment before we continue, I just want to say shout out to the kind of the flickering synth stringy part going in the background that's almost like you're going backwards in time or something like that. It's very trippy and unnerving and it's not particularly positive. It's very kind of a little bit stress-inducing, to be honest, which highlights the tension within this record. So we'll continue addressing for our funeral track number 2. Pitch shift vocals with guitar.
I'm breaking down, I can't get attached, cause everybody you love gon' try and hurt you back. Dressing for my funeral, I be dressed in black, boy with a blade, jack of blades, real maniac. And they don't love me, I know, true colours get shown, then the word gets out, then your cover gets blown. But I don't care about life, can you blame me, would you try if you would rather you die? Feel much now, you're gone.
Great variation there vocally with the effects. It's fantastic with the extra layers of that modulation on top there. It's great to have that shift in the tone there of the vocals. I know we've got the story of someone kind of coming to terms with the fact that someone's either left them or maybe they've lost sort of a sense of belief in themselves, but the sadness of the chords on the guitar coupled with that really kind of somber drum groove there and the delivery of it from an emotional perspective, it all kind of makes sense. It's an interesting aesthetic.
Heartbroken, I'm breaking down, I can't love again, cause everybody you love gon' try and fuck your friend. Dressing for my funeral, feeling dead again, boy cuts his skin, what a sin, I can't play pretend. And they don't love me, I know, true colours get shown, then the word gets out, then your cover gets blown. But but I don't care about life. Can you blame me? Would you try if you would rather you die?
I mean, that's a powerful line there. Can you blame me if I'd rather die? Something along those lines. Clearly, someone has left us and we're not really coping with it, and we've kind of lost a faith or a will to live. Obviously, having a very kind of sort of awful time with it, you know. I like that vulnerability, that opening up there. I think that's really, it's a special thing. I know that it's kind of the 101 of songwriting nowadays to show a bit of humanity there, but I think to be just kind of like blunt with it to this extent, to have that kind of somber solo acoustic alone in your room kind of groove there, kind of riffing it out, and you know, for it to be nice and short as well at 3 minutes. Well connected. Great, 808 and the low end as well. Nice and balanced. That's kind of sad. You can hear the lady, I suppose it's the one that they're talking about at the end, dressing for our funeral, I suppose. It's just getting ready for death when the light of our love of our life is gone. That spark has dissipated. I think that's a really mature track from Hicks. It's been a while since I've listened to their stuff, but I kind of miss it. It's nice to not have a track that's overhyped, over the top, desperate and clawing for your attention. It's more like the kind of somber mood of it. It is inviting you to hear more of it. There's a lot of stuff in there that I think is very, it's relatively conservative from like a compositional process. Like, we're literally just carefully developing those hook parts with the modulated, like, tuned parts there with like the low pitch stuff, that kind of stuff there, with extra kind of radio filter stuff to kind of make it sound like we're playing through the memories of the past. And even though it's obviously not happy fun time stuff, I don't think music has to be in order to be worthwhile to listen to. So well done, track 2. Very well thought out. We've got Cause of Death, track number 3. Lots of use of interesting filtering and a bit of pushing on the... Bit of oomph behind this one.
I just wanna bath in quicksand for a minute, then I'll wash it down with bleach.
Wash it.
How can I have all these people around me and nobody notice me? You just want me dead, I can tell, cause you're sinking as well. Why don't you come and float with me? Can you tell I'm dead, baby girl, from the look and the smell? You can be a ghost with me.
I'll go back in a little bit. I promise we'll go back, because I know they're about to lead into something a bit bigger. I just want to quickly comment on how interesting those drum tones are and how we came in with that slow rise there in the volume. Kind of claustrophobic nature of how the percussion's been filtered there. It's very in your face and almost seems like it's kind of like, if you're imagining drinking bleach, dealing with the fact that you're ignored by everyone around you as if you're practically invisible, right? Those are the thoughts swimming around in your head, and there's someone, I've had moments where like life has been pretty friggin' bad, right? Like in my head, and I can kind of relate to that, that feeling of things being overwhelming and like you can't even sort of see straight, let alone think straight. So the music sounds like it is what I'm trying to say. We'll go back a little bit though. I just want to get the build, okay? It was great to have that pause there as well, I think. Don't
tell me you love me, cause I've been here before. Razor blades go from my hand to the floor, and everybody knows but they don't wanna fall. Hold on to my back, I can handle it all. Don't tell me you love me, cause I've been here before. Razor blades go from my hand to the floor, and everybody knows but they don't wanna fall. Hold on to my back, I can handle it all. I might cut my veins, last 2 days that I'm drained. Every day's take these pills and I won't wake up again. Oh God, what a shame. You guys want it.
I mean, like, it's so atmospheric with these pads around the place, some other vocal chops in the higher layer there. It's very intense and a little bit unnerving, really, how the accompaniment pulsates and writhes in the ether, you know. And the thoughts of just taking those pills and ending it all, you know, it's extreme stuff. But the somber kind of guitar arpeggios at the same time balance it out. It never becomes too grotesque. It's almost like there's a sweetness in that, how final that solution might be.
I can tell 'cause you're thinking as well. Why don't you come and float with me? Can you tell I'm dead, baby girl, from the look and the smell? You can be a ghost with me. Don't tell me you love me 'cause I've been here before. Razor blades drop from my hand to the floor, and everybody knows but they don't wanna fall. Hold on to my back, I can handle it all. Don't tell me you love me 'cause I've been here before. Razor blades drop from my hand to the floor, and everybody knows but they don't wanna fall. Hold on to my back, I can handle it all.
Yeah, so like I think basically the chorus is kind of, you know, don't tell me you love me because I've been there before. Talking about the razor blade falling to the floor, you know, it gives that kind of image of someone not wanting to get emotionally attached to another because they just assume it's just going to go terribly, you know. Like they don't want to become in that pain anymore because last time it was basically the cause of death for them, like they're already dead inside. I think the story makes sense, like when you kind of compare it to what we had previously with Dressing for Our Funeral. I think these are various angles of Hicks up until now. Maybe this is the death of him like as his own person rather than like a literal death, you know, like a figurative thing, artistic thing, you know. A final comment, I love the variety to the drum grooves. I think it's great to have that kind of snare, bass, and drum focus with those chorusy guitar arpeggios in the bass. But they're then going to go to a ride and a rim shot focus is just a really great way of kind of like having a last little beat out to it, and then bam. You just got the drums by themselves, and then things have just ended there. I think it's really well thought out. There's no filler in these tracks, you know? Set 'em free. I heard that. Devious. Featuring Pezhead. I know people personally who might listen to how kind of bass boosted that is with those synths, how much it's pushing the limiter with the modulated vocals and all that kind of stuff in that higher range there. I like the falsetto over top of the bass, by the way. Nice stacking in the frequency spectrum. But I kind of dig it. I like how edgy and sharp and kind of nasty it is. It really makes sense with the darkness and horror of the subject matter, you know. Oh, it's really pretty now. That's what I mean with these arpeggios. They really add a kind of glory to it. I'm gonna be honest though, I'm not sure if I'm getting the words clearly, primarily because of how much the sidechaining is pushing into the vocals. I know that's like a stylistic thing, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but just in case you're wanting me to have a go at the song, what the song's about outside of the title, I can take a guess though. I mean, like, to be fair, every time you kind of have a go at a song without having like the lyric sheet in front of you, it's a guess. And even then, if it's like poetry, you know, when people are deliberately obtuse, then that's, you know, what it is. But talking about what I think this track is about, you know, devious. I think it's commenting on someone who is basically maybe the cause of death, the woman they had before, was playing games with that person, and maybe they were causing some mischief, and that was the cause of the drama within the relationship, the previous situation that Hicks wanted to avoid. I'm wondering if Pez Head was the person doing the hook lines with the devious part, and I think if that was the case, being in a different octave range than Hicks's kind of rapped parts, like in the middle section, I think that was a great choice. It helped to kind of contrast the two of them. It was easy to tell who was who, unless I've got them flipped, in which case I'll take the L on that one. But no, it's well done. No, I think that there was some really... It was actually probably my favorite track so far. I just loved the grittiness of those really pushed bass and synth parts there. I think that there was an aggression there that would come from the feeling of realizing someone's devious and having that kind of like distaste for them, to put it bluntly. And yeah, it was 1 minute 56. We got the story in short form, and there was, again, it was nice, short and sweet. It's like popcorn, isn't it? We got Far From Home, the interlude. Beautiful guitar tone, by the way. Triple tracking.
And I don't wanna fall in love, 'cause I know you love the drugs, and I just wanna feel your touch, but I know you don't wanna hug, how many times you gotta break me? I've been feeling lately all alone. I ain't thinking about my safety, baby, you can break me far from home. Baby, don't touch me, 'cause I don't wanna do it. Why does this happen? I've already been through it. You just wanna use me and don't know me. Why you want all of that? You don't know me. Baby, don't touch me, 'cause I don't wanna do it. Why does this happen? I've already been through it. You just wanna use me and don't know me. Why you want all of that? You don't know me.
Okay, so I think that Far From Home was basically about someone feeling isolated away from where they would usually be, and like you've got the situation where that you're being used and abused and taken advantage of, and you don't really know what to do with it. You know, they don't want to be touched, they don't want to have that connection with that person, they just want to be separate from their shenanigans. They talked about drugs or something like that, so I'm wondering if maybe the drug abuse or whatever we're talking about in the before again part was in part due to that other person in their life, as if like they were just trying to separate themselves from those vices and remove the influences. I mean, that could be it. I'm not sure, you know. But either way, I do think it's a really compelling track, and I just also want to give a shout out to how gorgeous those guitars were. Not only the central strum part, but the little picked parts on the sides there, and the additional sort of like lead lines on either way, or strums just scattered around the stereo field. I think a big strength of this album, The Outsider, so far at the halfway point, is the strength of the studio production. I think that we know exactly what we're doing at this point. We're very confident on a disc, and like especially with stuff like the way in the previous track, I think Devious or Cause of Death, like there was panning of the vocals. I think it was Cause of Death, where the vocals would go from side to side there. You know, there was beautiful little sort of filtered piano part with like just the low mids, and you just had the vocals going, like the thoughts were spinning in your head. Like there's careful attention to detail. There's a lot to love here. And it's not often that I like tracks like tracks on Spotify. I think that there's a lot to enjoy within this, and the 4 and 5 are my favorites so far, but yeah, I like all of them so far. We've got Irresponsible featuring Verksen. Irresponsible, featuring those kind of like trap elements there. the kick snares, that really kind of sparkly, bright little bass line there, boom, 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 with like shimmer in there, mid to high resonance there, and some really kind of flashy synth leads, and with the quick vocals, with the quick triplets. Yep, such a great cut to the low end. Okay, and it just kind of cuts it. Like, we've got carefully segmented sections here. We're just chopping it at the right points. We know how long we need to let a section like a verse or a hook last before the listener might want something a little bit sort of like alternative, and then boom, we present it. Okay, so made you be in LA in it. Okay, I get it. So we're basically having a comment on someone's behavior, and we're kind of saying, look, okay. Like, is this a response to the letter that was done in Far From Home? Is this someone talking to Hicks? Is this the people discussing stuff with him? Is it the interactions? Or is it Hicks responding to those who maybe have an issue with him not wanting them to touch him? Have they deliberately pitched the vocals in that part up an octave? Like, is that the same rapper? Bam, bam, bam. And that was just a really classy fade out. You don't actually get a lot of those. Like, we've probably had a couple of them this album, but like, you don't get fade outs like you used to. And it's not like we're doing it due to a lack of time constraint, because they're shorter. I just think it's like the end of a show or something like that. I just think it's the end of a show. I didn't really feel the same sort of emotional connection to that one. I just think maybe it's simply because I'm still kind of figuring out how they connect together, but I still think that Irresponsible was well produced and put together. I'm wondering if Verksen was the person doing the higher pitched vocals on top. I'd have to assume that would potentially be the case. No complaints about it, you know. We'll see what Wolves in Sheep's Clothing is about. Now, this one features November. There's a whistle.
On the wolf, on the wolf, on the wolf in sheep's clothing. On the wolf, on the wolf, on the wolf in sheep's clothing. Fuck your politics, I can smell the bullshit coming seeping while you're talking shit. How is this the way to live? Men up in an office taking sniff and taking benefits from families that need to feed their kids. How they take the piss? Every party I ignore, cause while your nans on life support their partying, cause they can't call it quits. I thought we're meant to distance, there's a reason we ain't listen, cause Matt Hancock's cheating with another bitch. I'm the devil, I'm the devil, I'm the devil's son. I don't care who you voted for, death to all that run. I'm the devil, I'm the devil, I'm the devil's son. I don't care who you voted for, death to all that run. Say goodbye, say goodbye,
It just keeps going up.
say goodbye to the bad guy. Say goodbye to the bad guy. Say goodbye to the bad guy.
I'm sorry, I have to pause and give a shout out to probably one of my favorite tracks. Well, obviously, I think this would probably be my favorite. Just the groove, man. Like, just the groove of the drums with that kind of sequenced bass line there. And the vocals keeping pace with the rhythm there. And just how kind of like rolling on that root note, going up the flat second in that hook section with a bit of extra distortion parts in the mid to highs. It's so catchy, but it's not cheesy. They've found the sweet spot, the equilibrium between having like a really anthemic sort of like verse line without having to sort of service the needs of the 101 sort of. It's great.
I'm the wolf.
I'm the wolf.
I'm the wolf in sheep's clothing. I'm the wolf.
Sick, man.
I'm the wolf. I'm the wolf in sheep's clothing. I know you wanna say goodnight to the bad guy. I know you wanna say goodnight to the bad guy. I know you wanna say goodnight to the bad guy. I know you wanna say goodbye to the bad guy. 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 Baby, shame me for what my mother named me. Hate me for what my father gave me. Try to change my name and tell me you're gonna save me. Then wonder why we walk around these streets looking hazy. Daily, plotting on the daily. Moose trying to blame me. They say it's for my safety. Make me, you cannot faze me. Bigots on my dick and I'll say it's for their safety.
I would love to. Someone should do a drum and bass remix of this. I swear it would go so hard, man. You could totally turn this into a drum and bass remix. That would be so sick. It's the right tempo for it, man. You could basically just have like the I'm a wolf in sheep's clothing is like the build part, and then just have and you could like have some kind of synthy bass parts that kind of mirror the vocals in that bit. Hicks, if you're watching this, like just make a drum bass remix. It might not necessarily be your jam, but it would trust me, it'd sound tight. I can't believe that the tempo choice here is accidental. The speed of it is golden, man. It's one of the wolf sheep's clothing part. The stuff we were talking about lyrically, of course. Yeah, we'll just let it play.
Adios. Say goodbye to the bad guy. 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 Say goodbye to the bad guy.
Now, that's my favorite track off the album by far. That's my favorite track. That is an absolute banger. Well, without a doubt. I like the slow stuff. You know, I think that it serves the purpose well as someone like, especially we've had like the guitar and the solo vocals. We've had like the kind of bass boosted kind of distorted bits where things have been really in your face and pushing the limiter in the master chain. But that's different there. That was just a really catchy 2.5-minute single where we talked about some dark stuff about people who seem like they're absolute sweethearts turning into complete sexual deviants or something along those lines. I think we talked about like, we're talking about genitalia and like having sex with like the wrong people or something like that along those lines. If I've got that wrong, please let me know. I got berated by another artist when I misinterpreted the lyrics the other time, so let me know. But you know, say goodbye to the bad guy. I assume that's probably either the person's going to disappear or like we're the bad guy. And we would combine that with Irresponsible, a track where we're talking about we just want to make the money, etc., just about the bag, etc. You know, we don't want to have to deal with the consequences beyond that. We don't have to deal with the drama. I'm wondering how it's all connected, whether we're the wolf in sheep's clothing or they are the wolf in sheep's clothing. Are we judging or are we being judged? Is this self-awareness or therapy? You know, either way though, absolute slammer of the tune. And I think just as a final comment, because we will move on, I know this review is probably getting on a bit, it's a bit longer than I was potentially expecting it to be. There's just a lot of cool stuff to talk about. I think that November might be doing the kind of vocal fryish kind of shouted parts in the background or like pan to the sides. So I think that you got Hicks in the center with the low range. Wolf in Sheep's Clothing, and they're doing the higher stuff. So they're stacking their vocals, the two different textures and the arrangement, and it sounds fantastic. It's just this is why you collaborate. You get the best ingredients of one person, the best ingredients of another, and you bring them together as a sum of the whole that's greater than its individual components, if that makes sense. And I just. Even though Hicks is very good, don't get me wrong. That there, I would genuinely listen to that outside of these reviews, and that's not something I say often. Break Yourself, track number 8. Oh, that bass line is filthy, dude. Okay, maybe Hicks is doing the...
I just stop. Honestly, I betrayed myself. Honestly, I just wanna break myself. Break myself. Make yourself. Do you know what it is? I just stop. Honestly, I betrayed myself. Honestly, I just wanna break myself. Break myself.
I mean, like, just shout out to the vocal technique there. If he is following correct vocal technique, because if he's not, he's going to wreck his vocal cords. The power behind that, the screaming into the microphone with one of the most deadly bass lines I've ever heard. The sound of that synth is absolutely toxic, man. I adore it. The drums, how round they are with the samples, kind of smashing into the mix with the side chaining. It's so simple yet so effective. It's brute force, dude. Great use of filtering as well. I mean, like, shout out for, like, how non-melodic it is. You know, there's very little color in it. There's a guy screaming, bomb, bomb, bomb. We had the siren synths going, wow, with the portamento on the movements there. But that's really what we've had so far. It's just very, just kind of raw, noisy, aggressive. Great panning of those repeaters. So I assume after Wolf in Sheep's Clothing, we've realized that this is a point of no return, that we can't really come back to it, and all the tension and turmoil has just kind of annihilated us, and we just want to break ourselves, you know? We just got to that point where we want to sort of self-harm. It's terrible. But to be kudos to Hicks. They sound like they are genuinely in pain. I very rarely hear music where the musician that is performing is literally able to convince me that they are in that much pain. It is so hard to get that sounding genuine, and here we are, man. Hicks and Ething, Do Not Resuscitate, track 9. Oh! I need a moment. I'm sorry. I need a moment. I apologize. I know these tracks are so short. Listen to that through headphones if you're not. If you're not already, listen to it through headphones. You'll get what I mean. It suffocates you. It's just a wall of sound to deafen you. I'm not even mad about it. But just, it's so powerful. I don't think I've listened to music that's just this relentlessly violent. Holy shit. Da, 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 da. You know, it's a very simple string motif there, melody theme on top. But then you have that and you think, oh, we won't be going too hard here. No, we won't be going too hard. And then just, the growls, the screams, the vocal fry there, the tremendous oomph to it. It just, it's so heavy. Like, I love my metal, right? I love my heavy metal. I love my death metal. I even like some grindcore and stuff occasionally. But this is heavy in that for some reason. I think it's because a lot of modern metal is produced in a way where it has a sense of sterilization to it, where it just seems so clean. And this is not. They are deliberately going for those harsh and harmonics there. They are deliberately going for the music to sound like the person is feeling. Do not resuscitate after being broken. You just get the feeling that this is an absolute nuclear blast, a danger zone of the highest proportions, that if you go near it, you're going to get set on fire. That's what the track sounds like, and it eviscerates you. It's just so intense. I don't like that. If this is an accurate representation of what Hicks and Ethan are going through, I don't like that they're going through it, because music like this, I think, can only really come from having lived and experienced what you're trying to communicate. And that must have meant they went through some horrific shit. And that doesn't make me feel happy as a human being. But at the same time, sometimes with life, you need to have horrific things occur in order to have the inspiration and the catalyst for incredible music, you know? And so I'm torn by this. I think it's an incredible track. Genuinely, I think it's an incredible album. It's one of the most real albums I've heard in a very, very long time. It's just, wow. I'm blown away by it. This is next level stuff for Hicks and everyone else involved. And I'm gonna need a coffee after this. I'm gonna need a cigarette, and I don't even smoke. Final words. Outro.
Are you happy now? He's gone, and he's never coming back. You can all live happily, believing the white lies you are told daily. Are you truly happy? Even though you're smiling, do you even know what happiness feels like? Although you may be happy a bad person has been removed from this world, who are you to judge what is bad? And who are you to see yourself as good? You must remember you're the devil as much as you are God. There is no such thing as a good person, just a bad person living a lie.
I just question myself like, did you ever get on, get on?
Yeah, that's incredibly sad. So I think at the end, this is, we're going to talk about this in the conclusion. I swear I'll edit this down. I think it's 40 minutes at the moment. It's too long. This album review is too long. I've spent too much time pausing and talking, but I'm hoping it's all helpful and relevant. I kind of had to, I had to talk about stuff. It's just part of the deal. If you want to listen to the album, you can go check it out on Spotify. It's right here. You don't have to listen to me pause it, but look. This last outro track, it's basically reminding people that even if someone dies, you shouldn't really be happy that they're dead. That kind of makes you a shitty person, right? And it's about looking at them. Are they really an intrinsically bad person, even if they did bad things? Are you, God so much as the devil, Kind of reminding people that, we're all human, we all make mistakes, and to try not to take people for granted and to try and look deeper into people. And, to really assess, are you actually happy? Are you living your life to the full? Are you doing what you feel as if you want to do or what you need to do? Or vice versa, what you need to do, or are you doing what you want to? I think that there are some really interesting topics brought up here. I think the piano accompaniment beside it is very pretty and reflective. And I think that just the wind, as if that is Hicks's spirit being sort of sent away wherever it will fly to at the end. I didn't quite catch what was being said in the vocoderish part. Something about heaven and hell. But yeah, what a ride, man. Because this is my conclusion of my review of this album by Hicks titled The Outsider. What do I think this album is about? I think that The Outsider is about a musician that is basically talking about themselves, all the various kind of like difficulties that they're going through, the problems in their life, and they're basically figuring out whether they want to continue going. And I think it's from the perspective of, you know, if they died, what would happen? What would people talk about at their funeral? And I think maybe it's doing that exercise. People get told of, what do you want to do? What would people say about you at your funeral? You know, like what would you want them to say? And I think if anything, this album is kind of communicating to us that we would want, that I think Hicks wants us to think. I know that like you probably think I'm a terrible person because like I'm an outsider. I had all this kind of issues with like relationships and like maybe, you know, drugs and like, you know, social issues and stuff like that. But like, I'm not a terrible person and I'm misunderstood. And I mean that genuinely, by the way. I don't mean in the like, you know, no one understands me kind of trope, you know. I don't mean in that sense. It's just literally, it just seems like there's more to me to the eye to this person. I think a lot of people, maybe he's aware that a lot of people don't know him that well, so they make assumptions about him. So I think that's basically what this is about. And I kind of like that the person who's speaking at the funeral is kind of challenging the listener to kind of assess for themselves what their own biases are, and to kind of go, oh, well, why you aren't perfect? Why do you consider yourself God and able to judge others when others can't judge you? You know, like, well, what are you doing? Are you even happy, etc.? I like the fact that you know, we've talked about lots of things within this. You know, like before we begin the outro and intro and outro, they're fairly self-explanatory. Dressing for our funeral, kind of giving an insight into what maybe the tipping point was. With like the loss of a person in their life, cause of death, you know. And Devious, I think, far from home, kind of trying to avoid bad influences, maybe people who might cause them to do things negatively, trying to avoid any sort of like things that might cause them to go off the rails potentially when they're trying to do the best they can just to get by. Irresponsible wolf in sheep's clothing, where maybe we're giving into our vices, etc. Maybe we've made terrible mistakes. Maybe we see people around us that we trusted as being not trustworthy anymore. Break yourself and do not resuscitate, I think, are the final things. Break yourself. Okay, I'm in so much pain, I can't do this. Just break yourself. I'm so angry. I just can't cope anymore. I need this to end. And then do not resuscitate. You've gone to the deep end. You can't come back from this. Please don't wake me up if I decide to make that decision to sort of like cut things off early. And then final, you know, it's not for kids. I think we started a lot more moderately than we had at the end. We started with the rapping at the start, maybe a little more calmer and less kind of like tilted, and maybe a little bit even disaffected and apathetic. And then as we went on, especially towards Break Yourself and Do Not Resuscitate, we became almost like completely feral. We were ruthless with our vocals. We screamed, we growled, we shouted, we were forceful with it. And I think that whenever we spoke, rapped, screamed, growled a word, should I say, it was appropriate. There were no points where I was like, why are we doing it this way? Because why, you know, of course not. Because we were very attentive to what we needed with this, and we made the right decisions, I think. We never overstayed our welcome. There were some really pretty vocal melodies and harmonies occasionally with the clean parts, but predominantly it was the rhythmic flow, the rapping of the vocals, etc., which demonstrated great vocal technique. It had great control of head and chest voice. There were modulated parts where we sort of like had a bit of metatune or something like that on our voices, and they were nicely stacked in the frequency spectrum as well, so there were no issues there. I think that yeah, we were appropriate with our delivery. It made sense for the story. We knew how to rap and sing and all that. And I think that we allowed the music to have as much importance as the story we were telling. And when we did collaborations with November, Vixen, and Pezhead and Ething, I think we allowed them to get some lines into. Maybe they were involved with the production of the vocals, I'm not sure. But either way, we collaborated well with them to use their strengths as singers or performers or whatever, and I think that they made the music better. And not that the stuff with Hicks alone was not good. I enjoyed Hicks's tunes, but also the collaborations were slightly different sounding. I think think they were really well thought out and imagined. I think, Wolf in Sheep's Clothing was my favorite, I think, because of the hook line, but also because of damn near everything else. It was just an absolute banger. The tracks, they were basically between 1 and 3 minutes. That was long enough for them. We told the story, we came in and out, there was no filler. There was some verse and chorus parts, some maybe occasional interludes. Far From Home was like a through composed thing with like 2 sort of like A and B sides. And before again, at the end, final words, internet and try outro, they were just spoken parts with like maybe that bit at the end with the wind and the vocoded parts with the wind. It's well thought out. There's a lot of range and variety to the compositions there, so we never felt as if we were kind of like phoning it in there. The album is 18 minutes 47 seconds, so you can just sit down and listen. You can have a nap and listen to this if you want. It's wild. Although I don't think you'd be sleeping very much if you listen to this while snapping. But anyways, there was a range of different instruments among it. We had obviously basses, drums, guitars, pianos, key synths, as well as like the different vocal tones. And we had some other sort of synth foley textures there. Some like things about the bags in the airport or something like that. Other points, wind sounds, etc. Which made it a bit more kind of special, I think, because obviously bass, guitar, drums, piano, etc. They're part of the course in terms of music production. They're common instruments. They were played well. I mean, like the grooves on the drums were nice and varied. Great use of triplets, so 8th and 16th notes for the most part. But there were no drums sometimes, and that was fantastic. Sometimes we just had the strummed guitar, like in Far From Home, and that was great with the different positions of the various kind of like takes of the different instruments in the stereo field. The strumming, it was nice and bright. The bass lines typically rolled around the root notes. The keys were just occasional sort of low melodic ideas that were there kind of as like by themselves, and we had the vocals kind of spinning around over top like in Cause of Death. And we had lots of sort of like in Break Yourself and Do Not Resuscitate. Sometimes we had like the siren synths or like the plucked ideas and the strings as well, like in Do Not Resuscitate for like the first part. But we had sort of key instruments, and then there were other ones that were occasionals, and they made those tracks special and gave a sense of difference to the individual pieces. But I think in part because of the style of vocals, the size of the tracks, there were things that connected the tracks together, made it sort of like a chronological listen. And I think that's something really special as well, that we went from start till finish and knew that we had a journey we were taking the listener on. So that was great. And so basically when you combine the capacity of the vocals, and then the story, and then the way the instruments were played and performed, and then like the minimalism with the different parts of the accompaniment, you've just got the themes of each, where each track had a different sort of like sense of momentum to it. Some were more energetic, like Wolves in Sheep's Clothing, where that was more of kind of like a get up and kind of get active thing. Break, but like it was like a kind of a cool, calm and in control thing, like we suddenly knew what we were talking about. Break, like we figured things out. Break Yourself, where things become completely a mess. Far From Home, almost nostalgic, wanting a safe place there, basically, because they just are sick of being taken advantage of. And Cause of Death and other tracks, Devious there, with like little bits of kind of like a general sense of slickness with the production, anyways. But the way the instruments sounded with their sort of ideas and concepts matched well with the story and the vocals, so they were well connected throughout. And then obviously before we begin the final words were more sort of like they were their own sort of unique ideas, more trapped around like the kind of introducing and the going of the narrator over top. And overall things were well connected. I don't think there's a note out of place. It was well done. I mean, the studio recording, mixing, mastering, the final thing here is tremendous. I liked the way that the vocals were done. They were nice and clear, whether they were clean parts, the rapped parts, the bit of filtering them occasionally, like Hertz filtering. So like sometimes they were more low oriented. There were backing vocals, there were parts to the sides of the stereo field, etc. There's so much range without being a storytelling device. It made a lot of sense. And the mid-tune and auto-tune that we had there to kind of spice it up a bit, sort of like synthy color there, was also well received. I think the drums were fantastic. I mean, like the drums sounded really nice and clear and polished, and the side chaining especially, there was very aggressive in some tracks, like I think Devious, as well as Break Yourself and Do Not Resuscitate. Yeah, like that was very intense, but like at the same time, it never was too overwhelming in a sense that it still made sense with what the subject was about or the instruments involved there. So it never alienated me as a listener. And the guitars, bass, pianos, synths, etc. were nicely filled and EQ'd into the frequency spectrum there. And when there was double tracking, it was nice and wide in the stereo field there, so it sounded like the guitar was surrounding you, such as in Far From Home there. There was dynamic range, there were quiet parts and loud parts, there were fade outs there. I think they made, even though they were short form tracks, they made them more interesting to listen to. That's just more, even, like, especially with tracks like Break Yourself and Do Not Resuscitate, where it kind of attacks the listener with how kind of like sort of sharp it is. You do need there to be like moments for the listener to catch their breath just to be able to recover from it, even though from a sense of like creative's perspective, it makes sense for it to be that intense for that amount of time. I think that it kind of kicks you in the teeth a little bit sometimes, but I think that's kind of to help you kind of imagine what it feels like for the people who wrote it. The compression limiting was fantastic. It was nice and low without pumping, and there was a general sense of major grade commercial production to it. I just think that it was more of an expansion of Hicks's current boundaries there, and they've moved upwards and onwards, and I wish them the best of luck in future, because this is an extremely positive review of this album from Hicks titled The Outsider, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do go show them some love via the various social medias and their Spotify page, and stay cool and stay safe. Please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as either hell more than ever thought crazy stuff going on in the world, and I'll catch you in the next review. Spiderhands Out.